And welcome to Rob Schmidt Tonight. It has been a busy few days for our ailing American president. His first big international trip to Europe has been President Biden's big debut on the world stage. And today he was more than 2 hours late for a NATO press conference with no explanation. One would assume there was added preparation time for Biden, as today he actually took questions from the media. We're going to get to that here in just a second. But first, over the weekend, Biden again indicated there was potential coordination maybe between the White House and the media. Take a look at this.
That's how I'm going to handle it. I'm sorry, I'm going to get in trouble with staff if I don't do this the right way. Jennifer Jacobs, Bloomberg.
So we've heard this multiple times, going to get in trouble, got to do this the right way. How creepy is it that there's an order that he must follow to the questions for the media? Are the questions scripted? Is the press team coordinated with the press? What is that? Whatever it is, the president, at the very least, is clearly being handled by other people. The leader of the most powerful country in the world can't maneuver his way through simple press conferences on his own. He needs constant supervision. On this trip, his wife appears to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
How are your meetings going here in Cornwall?
Very well.
Come on.
Really nice evening.
They
always do.
And they laugh. Everybody just laughs like this is normal for the American president to have his wife just pull him away because he can't answer questions. Aha! You know Vladimir Putin is watching. He's definitely laughing. He's licking his lips. More on this week's big Biden-Putin meeting coming up here in just a minute. But what have we learned from this trip so far? Well, there's going to be another COVID-19 origin investigation. And of course, the feckless leaders of Europe and the United States are letting Dr. Tedros and the World Health Organization handle this one as well. The only reason we need another investigation is because the WHO screwed up the first one so badly. So of course it makes sense they do the second one too, right? Welcome to liberalism. We also watched Europe embrace the return of American gullibility, Biden reaffirming his commitment to NATO, which lets many countries mooch off America's insane military spending. But most importantly, we learned our president just really isn't very capable in this arena. There are several examples. At a roundtable event, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson introduced everybody at the table, including the president of South Africa. Here's our president seconds later.
And the president of South Africa. And the president of South Africa, as I said earlier.
Oh, you did?
I did not. I certainly did.
You get mentioned twice, so.
I mean, he looks like Grandpa sitting there at the dinner table with no clue what's going on. That's the President of the United States. Here's how Biden closed out his G7 press conference, answering a question about removing Trump-era sanctions on aluminum and steel against European allies.
When you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans to
120 days. Give me a break. Need time.
Imagine if Trump gave that answer. In this same press conference, he mixed up Syria and Libya 3 times. They're nowhere near each other. And legitimately may not know the difference between the two countries anymore, and that's presuming that he ever did. Of course, the media doesn't like to bring that up. Why would they? Wouldn't want to expose just how clueless the sitting American president is. But let's go back 22 years ago. And Governor of Texas George W. Bush is running for president, a Boston political reporter asking these questions.
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you?
Can you name the president of Taiwan?
Yeah, Lee. The new Pakistani general has just been elected. He's not elected. This guy took over office. He appears he's going to bring stability to the country, and I think that's good news for the subcontinent.
And you can name him?
General. I can name the general.
And it's?
General.
Prime Minister of India?
The new Prime Minister of India is, no.
That was when he was the governor of Texas, and he didn't know the answers. Remember how damning that was for George W. Bush? But do you notice a difference? I mean, now we have the sitting American president, and he's overseas. Imagine if Donald Trump had confused Syria and Libya 3 times. They're in different continents. It'd be the top story all night long. But because it's Biden, nobody knows about it. Protect the Democrat, as always, our loyal, state-run, liberal mainstream media. Biden is way over his skis on all this, and everybody knows it. I don't think that needs to be pointed out any longer. But on Wednesday, Biden is going to meet with Vladimir Putin in Switzerland. He can barely handle the feeble leaders of the G7 and in NATO. Biden did a lot of political damage to Donald Trump by casting him as a puppet for Putin, of course. Biden, like most phony politicians, capable of making himself seem much more competent, brave, and virtuous than he really is. He's a known liar. He's a known plagiarist. And in the past few years, he's been telling a story designed to make you think that he's a tough American brand, willing to stand up to the world's dictators. Biden says he told Putin to his face he doesn't think he has a soul. Putin was asked about that. Take a look.
President Biden says, one time when you met, you were inches away from each other. And he said to you, I'm looking in your eyes and I can't see a soul. And you said, we understand each other. Do you remember that exchange?
But I do not remember this particular part of our conversations, to be honest with you. He probably has a good memory.
That's a little knock to the dimension there. Probably has a good memory. You know, he doesn't remember it because it probably never happened, because Biden likes to make up stuff like that to make himself seem tough and good. Asked about those comments in today's press conference, Biden with a very bizarre response, and then he just completely phases out. Let's watch together.
In a weekend interview, Vladimir Putin laughed at the suggestion that you had called him a killer. Is that still your belief, sir, that he is a killer?
To answer the first question, I'm laughing too. Well, look, I mean, he has made clear that the answer is.
In his meeting, his bilateral meeting with Turkish President Erdogan, the American press was actually kicked out before the start of the meeting.
We couldn't hear you, sir.
I didn't say anything.
Thank you guys, let's go, come on, let's go. Come on guys, let's move. Come on, thank you. Let's go, come on, thank you guys.
So he lets the Turks kick out the American media and leave in their state-run media that they have in Turkey because they don't have the same freedoms as the United States. Boy, is he tough on dictators. Really tough. Washington Post reporter Ann Rumsey-Guerin, you don't hear them complain too much about Democrats over there, but she tweeted out 1.5 hours and counting outside the room where President Biden is meeting with Turkish leader Erdogan. We were supposed to go in for a picture and remarks at the start. Turkish official media was allowed in. Yep, we have not been. No explanation. #free press. Can you imagine? Erdogan runs a country that is ranked 153rd out of 180 by the World Press Freedom Index. That means there's essentially no press freedom at all. Freedom of the press, of course, is a cornerstone of American democracy, and Biden is being shown up by a literal dictator, and he just sits there and takes it and says, I didn't say anything. Remember all those times that Trump let the media stay in the room for the entire negotiation, a move that legacy Democrats hated, and to be fair, probably legacy Republicans as well? Pelosi nervously laughing, hating the exposure, hating the American people, getting a look at how the sausage is made. And they call Trump the fascist. That's the funniest thing about all of this. What a clown show all of this is. And then today, Biden parted with the rule that politics ends at the water's edge. He's overseas. Shouldn't be talking about politics. He slammed Republicans and Americans who voted for Donald Trump. Here's part of it.
The Republican Party is vastly diminished in numbers. The leadership of the Republican Party is fractured. And the Trump wing of the party is the bulk of the party, but it makes up a significant minority of the American people.
I can't wait for the friggin' midterms. And if that were even a little bit true, he wouldn't have to cut Republicans out of the negotiations for his infrastructure bill. This is a split country right now, and it's not a minority on the right, that's for sure. This was in response, of course, though, to a question about January 6th, which, of course, had to be brought up even in Europe with all the other stuff going on. It was a total softball question from the same Washington Post reporter who complained about not having access to the Biden-Putin meeting. And here is that hilariously pointless softball question that this woman asked of all the questions she could ask to Biden, who gives very little access to the media during this very important trip. Here is the dumbest softball to Biden you could give. Let's take a listen.
You've said several times that America is back at allies' side, but a lot of those allies are themselves pretty rattled by what happened on January 6th, an attempted overturning of your election.
And she complains about free press. You want to be free press? Then start asking tough questions of Democrats. Quit being such a fake. What a joke. I mean, that just cracked me up. All right, with so much at stake, let's rehash that unarmed insurrection she's talking about, since it was worthy of her only question to Biden on this trip. A couple hundred Trump voters evidently tried to take over the entire country. Did you know that? They were armed with MAGA flags. That'll go well against the American military. An insurrection where more selfies were snapped than windows smashed. The fifth and final reporter to be granted a question today asked if Ukraine would be admitted to NATO. And here, with the best answer of the day, is the father of Hunter Biden.
Well, now that Russia has invaded parts of Ukraine, does that effectively rule out Ukraine ever entering NATO?
The second question is, the answer is no. The first question, it depends on whether they meet the criteria. The fact is they still have to clean up corruption. The fact is they have to meet other criteria to get into the action plan. And so it's, school's out on that question. It remains to be seen.
That's the same guy whose drug-addicted son made $80,000 a month from a Ukrainian gas company despite having no life experience other than operating a crack pipe and hiring escorts. So there you have it. That was funny. Joining me tonight on the set to talk about all this is Chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Matt, good to see you.
Good to be with you, Rob.
So just first off, the response to that had to be the best answer of the day.
It's actually kind of serious because here you have an increasingly aggressive Russia. Vladimir Putin clearly sees America as weakened under Biden. And Biden basically gives the hint of, hey, we might not protect Ukraine if they get invaded. It shouldn't have been about whether or not they're in or out of NATO. It should have been, let me make a very clear statement.
Yeah.
Russia should not touch Ukraine. He didn't say those words. It's not on the cue card.
What is going on here? I mean, and can you imagine if you had a Republican in the White House making some of these moves?
No, the George W. Bush montage that brought back nightmares. So I was on that campaign. That was a tough moment,
Sure.
And candidates have those exchanges and they get better. The problem with Joe Biden is he's been doing this his whole life. He's not going to get better. No. He's probably going to get worse. And so he's my president. He's your president. Like, he's got to do a good job overseas. And so that's why the staff is trying to prevent him from answering any questions, because he really can't answer them. That's a terrible performance. And I just hope they don't replicate it. They're going to have to keep him under lock and key even more. And by the way, when Nancy Reagan said to Ronald Reagan, in hushed tones, and said they were doing the best they could about a scandal, it was an international scandal that the First Lady was actually answering the question for the president. Here you have Jill Biden basically leading the guy off, off that platform. It was not a good moment. Not a good look.
It looks like she's trying to take his job from that picture on Air Force One.
Well, this is the question. At CPAC, we had this question last time. We're going to talk about it again. Who is in charge? Is it the staff who's writing these notes about who he has to call on or whatnot?
Yeah.
Is it his wife? It can't be Kamala Harris, because I have to think that woman can't even get through a basic interview without setting herself, putting herself in a bad position. So there's this whole question about who's really in charge. By the way, that's a scandal in and of itself. We shouldn't be electing people to the presidency who don't have the ability to actually handle the rigors of the job. It's a rigorous job. I've seen it up close. It's not an easy job.
But he's so protected. I mean, it's like nobody wants to talk about these things, and they make it sound like it's crazy to bring it up. Yeah. It's ridiculous. More than 100 reporters, Matt, waited 3 hours for this press conference. Biden was so late, and they only got 5 questions. You have to think that on days like this, the media must, to some extent, miss the transparency of the Donald Trump administration, where they got to ask 1 million questions, and we got to see everything.
Look, and he got ribbed, President Trump, because there was a time or two where he had a card that had some writing on it that a staffer, like Hope Hicks or someone, had handed him.
Right.
And, my wife used to always say, he would give him a hard time. He's like, I don't need your notes. I know what I'm going to say. And he was fearless in walking up to that press crew. He would answer each and every question.
He would exhaust it.
And I actually think that and I've talked to several members of it, the White House press corps, they are beginning to get very frustrated over this over-management of them. There's no access. There's no press conferences. And it's not like the vice president is stepping in when the president isn't. This is like a news blackout. We've never seen anything like this in the era of the modern news organizations.
It feels in a way, and it's not, it's still a free country, don't take this the wrong way, but it feels in a way like a dictatorship. It feels in a way like a place where the White House has some kind of control over the media, because by and large, the media voted for Joe Biden. They like Joe Biden. They don't want to hurt him. I think they see the threat of Donald Trump coming back, and they're going to protect this old man as much as they can.
Yeah, lids have replaced leaks. And the problem is it's the twin problems of a White House press corps that has absolutely nothing to write about or to cover. And then social media that's blocking all of us who might be political critics of the policies coming out of the White House. So you have those two things going on at the same time. And I want Joe Biden to understand very clearly, go back to the Gallup polls, the number one group in this country in terms of size for the last 20 years are conservatives. We outnumber socialists, we outnumber liberals. I don't know what he's talking about, but I'd like to sit him down for a cup of joe and explain to him the demographics of this country. They think that they're winning on all these demographic trends, and the facts are the opposite.
It's unbelievable. Climate change, a key focus among the NATO leaders. Here's the president today.
We adopted a far-reaching plan to make sure NATO can meet the challenges that we face today and in the future, not yesterday. The NATO 2030 agenda, and that we agreed to fully resource that agenda.
Your response to this focus?
Yeah, this is where America first has been swapped back to this soft, mushy globalism. The whole climate change agenda really benefits China, who always gets special sets of rules, and so does India. And the American working man and woman is the one who's damaged as our energy prices will go through the roof. You know, we don't have a lot of nuclear power here like they have in Europe, so they really take advantage of this situation, and we're going to write all the checks. We're writing all the checks for the vaccines. We're writing all the checks now again for the WHO. We're going to write all the checks when it comes to our use of carbon. And all we do with carbon, you know what we do with it? We create jobs. We make things here again. Remember when wages went up under Trump and manufacturing jobs went up? You know why that happened? Because energy prices were reasonable. Now, you know, when I fill my truck, it's a sticker shock. And, and for people that are having trouble paying their bills, that's a terrible thing.
But all the libs think that if gas costs enough, nobody will ever drive again. That's the way they...
Hey, it's all about bicycles and windmills, man.
Exactly right. Yeah. Matt, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, coming up, we just heard Biden talk about Ukrainian corruption. The president does maintain that his son is not corrupt.
And it turns out he did not do a single thing wrong, as everybody's investigated.
But an explosive report by our next guest tells another story. Hunter's unpaid taxes helping to destroy a narrative behind Democrats' first Trump impeachment push. He's going to explain that after the break. Plus, the Pentagon finally releasing a long-awaited report on UFOs. We can't wait to see this. But before we prepare to take them to our leaders, should we consider the idea that first contact could be fatal?